Dreams of Aether was a game that was recommended to me after I talked about how much I loved the Mindwave demo, because it too was another WarioWare style experience. And I thought, hey, why not give it a go? So, what did I think of it? Well, Dreams of Aether takes place in the Rivals of Aether series, where what's happened is a number of characters have found themselves stuck in a deep slumber, which there's trying to just figure out what's going on and how to wake back up. Somehow this connects to microgames? I tend not to question these things. Overall, there's 5 different stages that you work your way through, as this is a pretty short game. I ended up beating this game in half an hour. But despite the runtime, this did have a great deal of variety when it came to those microgames. Nothing ever truly felt overplayed, and everything is generally kept simple with you using the arrow keys Z or X. I think my only critique really when it comes to the microgames is that the games aren't always as quickly understood as I think the developers would have liked. I found myself quite a few times failing simply because I was presented with all this visual information that I either couldn't understand in time or just failed to understand in time, which would cause me to slip up and make a mistake, which I didn't find myself doing when I was playing Mindwave. Mindwave had a much easier time conveying all the necessary information to me. Some of this is definitely Dreams of Aether struggling to communicate what I'm actually supposed to be doing. Like when I saw flap, and so, okay, I'm pressing X, I'm flapping, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to get as high as possible, because maybe a platform's going, oh, it's Flappy Bird, and now I don't have enough time to get down, so I've lost a life. Great! I want to stress that, like, most of the time, this wasn't an issue. It just cropped up enough times that I was like, huh, it feels like some of these maybe could have been explained just a little bit better. Now, it wasn't enough to ruin the experience. I still got through the game. I think I only got the game over once, but it would have been nice maybe if some of the games had been explained just maybe a little bit better, but it's not game ruining at all. And overall, the gameplay experience was still fun. The pixel art style is honestly gorgeous. Like, ignoring the times where the game will clearly take the mickey with, like, some of the visuals that they throw in the game, there's clearly a very talented team behind these games. And the story, without spoiling it, was incredibly silly in my opinion. The game came out on April 1st, which I think shows itself in many parts of the game. In fact, one gameplay thing that I do have to majorly compliment was on the final level, where now you had to tear your attention between 2 microgames, but to help things out, they do actually give you twice as many lives. Now this I actually adored, because now despite the fact that I should, based on my previous complaint, actually dislike this, I actually found it really good. I think having double the lives really helped me to just accept this a lot more, but rarely did I find myself stuck with a combination of games that I found unworkable, like where I didn't have enough time to figure out what was going on. If I lost a life, it was usually because I jumped too quickly and wasn't paying attention to one microgame whilst doing the other. I actually quite enjoyed doing that 2-game juggle. Plus, by that point, I think I played the game enough that I really wasn't going to struggle to do any of the games on their own. So having the 2-game approach was a fun little way to ramp up the difficulty at the end whilst still keeping it fun and exciting. The game initially came out for free, though I did miss that window, so now if you want to get it, it costs £2.50. I think my only real gripe wouldn't be the skill issue, it would just be the fact that the game is extremely short. Of course, I can go and play the endless mode to get more replay value out of the game, but the fact that I've beaten the entire game in just under half an hour, well, just makes me wonder how long I could play the endless modes before I think, oh well, that's all that done. And I think that's definitely something to think about if you're considering buying this game for yourself. If the runtime for you isn't a problem, then I definitely gotta give this game a recommendation. It's overall really a fun experience, and I hope we get to see more microgames experiences in the future. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of Dreams of Aether if you've tried it out yet, or if you're considering trying out Dreams of Aether yourself.
Super Mario Bros.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. To be honest with you, what might have been the 1000th time I've played this game. I've got this game on the Nintendo Switch, which is where I got the footage for this review. I've got this game on the Nintendo 3DS. I've got this game on the Game Boy Color. In fact, I have the Game Boy Color version on the 3DS. I'm pretty sure I have it on my Wii U. I even have the Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt cartridge for my NES. Like, I've got this on real hardware, and the reason that I've got it on so many different platforms is because, for me, this is easily got to be like one of my comfort foods in gaming. Super Mario Bros. For the NES is such a simple game to get into. Given that this was made for a 2-button controller, all you ever have to think about is, you know, the fireball and run button, the jump button, and obviously just moving around. And because this is just the basic foundation of Super Mario Bros., there's not a whole lot going on. Like, you quickly memorize everything that's happening in the game. It's not like later Mario games, which you'll get a general gist of, and then later it'll throw something new at you, which, not complaining about that at all, but it makes this game so easy for me to just almost switch my brain off and just relax with it, because, you know, I already know what's coming up a lot of the time. Obviously, in my case, that also means that I can end up in a lot of situations where I get a little too bold and end up making some very rash decisions when jumping. Obviously, as this is the bare basics of what Super Mario Bros. Platforming would be, you only have, like, the mushroom, the fire flower, a star power-up, and that's about it, really. So, you know, you're not going to get any fancy power-ups like you'd see later down the line, but honestly, I never really found myself hurting for them. Like, sure, getting like a Tanuki tail or a cape would really have helped things even more, but even when Mario is, like, boiled down to its barest essentials, it's just a really fun game. Mario still controls incredibly well. There's like a nice weight to his jumps, and once you've gotten used to the levels and gotten enough practice in, you can breeze through levels in such a satisfying way. And I love how when you get to the Bowsers, or as far as I'm aware, some of them are fake Bowsers, and then there's the real Bowser, that is fun in its own way, because you can either practice your movement skills by ducking and dodging Bowser to get to the axe at the end, or if you've got the Fire Flower, you can just mow Bowser down. So on a gameplay front, I still think Super Mario Bros. For the NES is a ton of fun. And I've got very few complaints there at all. Like, yeah, okay, maybe some of the more precise jumps can get a little bit frustrating. There seems to be a little bit of slipperiness there that can make things just a bit frustrating, but I don't have any that really is like a big deal to me, because the game is just so quick and simple. Like, the entire gameplay session, including playing through the game a second time, though in that case I did use the warp zones, I think overall was less than an hour. It's not a long game at all. I think I only have 2 more complaints, and even then I'm going to have to put an asterisk next to them. There's the graphics, which admittedly have aged quite a bit. Like, yes, there's definitely some nostalgia to that classic Mario sprite, but Peach does look like she's melting. Like, and Bowser does look very odd. Like, there's some classic sprites that I still adore. The Goomba, for instance, I think looks incredible, and, you know, Mario himself, of course, looks great, but there's definitely some areas where some of the sprites just haven't aged terribly well. But again, this is like 40 years old at this point. There's a shocker for you. So it's not like I'm hammering the game too hard about that, and I still think the game looks perfectly serviceable. The music is definitely an instance where there are some absolutely killer tracks, but then you have stuff like the Underground beat, which is so simple and basic. It's a bit hit and miss, but it is more hit than miss. Like, the Overworld theme, the Underwater theme, those absolutely slap. And in fact, it's kind of astounding to me that these became such iconic tracks that Nintendo still referenced them to this very day. So while, yes, I would have loved to see stuff like the Underground theme and whatnot get, like, expanded a little bit more, because it can get a little bit repetitive, it's still a pretty dang good soundtrack, in my opinion. Overall, I think that Super Mario Bros. For the NES is such a fun game, and an easy recommendation. Like, there's so many ways to play this game, and it's literally, it's going to take maybe an hour of your time if you're new to the game. And if you're not new to the game, revisiting it, you're probably going to beat the game in like half an hour. If not less. There are people that beat this game in like 5 minutes nowadays. Easily a great recommendation from me. As long as you're willing to make some of the concessions that obviously it's going to lose a lot of those like creature comforts that the Mario series has gathered over the years, I still think it is a wonderfully fun game nonetheless. And well worth any Mario fan's time to check out. Although, I'm assuming you've done that already. I just played Side Effect, a game that's still an early prototype that aims to take a similar gameplay style to Buckshot Roulette. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Buckshot Roulette, it was this Russian roulette style game where it was you, a computer opponent, and you had this shotgun, randomized blank and live rounds, as well as a litany of different items that helped to spice up the gameplay, and you had to decide whether you were going to shoot the shotgun at yourself or your opponent. And trust me, there was a lot of pros and cons to any of your decisions, and the items helped to spice things up. It made Buckshot Roulette a ton of fun. In fact, I played it again in between gameplay sessions of Side Effects just to remind myself why I really did enjoy Buckshot Roulette. So, how did Side Effects compare? So, in terms of the gameplay, the way Side Effects works is you'll get a bottle, or in later rounds bottles, of random pills, where all of the pills will be placebos except for one. Or two, it can change up, but the point is, you want to make sure that you're eating the placebos. Unlike Buckshot Roulette, you can only interact with something for yourself, which does raise the stakes a little bit. One of the things that I hated doing in Buckshot Roulette was turning the shotgun on myself if I didn't know that it was a blank shell. But in this, I've got no choice. I have to just hope that I picked the right pill. So right away, the game was far more anxiety-inducing. Not only that, but you're not just juggling lives like in Buckshot Roulette, but there is a tolerance meter. See, you're not completely out of the woods if you eat a placebo pill. Each type of pill takes a certain amount of tolerance away, and when you run out, you lose a life anyway, meaning that you can't just coast by on lucky guesses, you'll still end up losing lives if you're not careful. Also, if you lose a life in the game, your tolerance will fully restore, so even whether that be because you ran out of tolerance or you ended up taking, one of the negative pills, you gain all of your tolerance back. So it's a careful balance, really. Plus, also, if you or your opponent ends up taking, the bad pill that takes away a life, you know that that particular type of pill is safe, and usually the strategy you end up taking is, once you know which one is the bad pill, whether it be because you or an opponent took it, or because you got the drug test item, you end up just taking the rest of them and waiting for the AI to slip up. There's also like heal pills as well if you last long enough. These end up restoring your life if you end up taking it, which admittedly I never got to, which we'll get into that. But yeah, like there's little things here and there that when the game gets developed more could actually make for some very interesting gameplay. Now let's get into the items. There are several items in the game. There's this needle which when you stick that needle into you, it'll allow you to deal with the tolerance deficit that comes with eating a placebo pill, meaning that if you do pick successfully, you'll get no negative effects that turn. Of course, if you end up picking one of the bad pills, then you've wasted the item, so it's a risk that can be doubly painful if you get it wrong. There's the replicator, which is able to just take an opponent's item, or, well, it doesn't take the item away, but it allows you to get a copy of that item. There's the sugar pill, which allows you to skip your turn, which, depending on the situation, this can be a great stalling tactic to see if the AI will slip up, or if you know which one is the bad pill and you're running out of options, can be a good way to try to avoid almost certain doom. Oh, there's also the drug test as mentioned before, which will allow you to definitively say whether a pill is good or bad. If the pill's good, you just take it straight away, and if it's bad, you'll leave it alone and hope that the AI grabs it themselves without realizing. It's also actually kind of convenient because, as far as I can tell, you'll be able to keep track of the pills that your opponent drug tests. So if they place a pill on the ground and don't pick it back up, you can reasonably guess that the drug is a bad one and avoid it as well. So there is a little bit of strategy there. And I wish there were more items. For instance, I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool to have, like, say, a contraband one where you actually sneak in one of those death pills? That could be kind of cool. I don't know if it would work necessarily, but I think that would be a fun little addition, you know, raise the stakes and make it more likely that your opponent picks up one of them, you know, whether it be one of the ones that this company brought in or one that you brought in. I think it would help raise the stakes a little bit, because there isn't a whole lot of interaction you can do with your opponent. Quite simply, you just take turns until one of you takes the bad pill, and then you try to strategize from there. Ultimately, I think that is one big thing against it, is that I think the amount of interactions you can have are severely limited by this concept. In Buckshot Roulette, while I was playing, I could create these little schemes here and there where I could handcuff my opponent, take a cigarette to restore some of my health, grab the magnifying glass to have a look at what pill it was, shoot the shotgun at myself to, you know, save a turn. Then I could just shoot the shotgun twice at my opponent to see if they end up, like, getting shot twice. Or hell, I might even be able to saw the end off to do double the damage, doing a potential 3 damage whilst restoring one of my health. Whereas in side effects, you can replicate an item, do a drug test to test if a pill is good or bad. If it's bad, maybe take a sugar pill afterwards and then wait to see if your opponent will grab it. It's not that, you know, it's just there's less interesting, like, utilization of the items, in my opinion. But of course, that is because the game is in a prototype. Like I've got criticisms, of course, but I do want to stress that every criticism I have does have the asterisk that this is a prototype, and it's undoubtedly going to get updates to address some of my criticisms. Another thing that absolutely I think needs to be updated is the AI. In Buckshot Roulette, the AI feels like it's just as, if not smarter than you, and can absolutely turn things around. And I know that that is somewhat limited because of the fact that you can't directly interact with your opponent. There were times that I felt the AI just really made some boneheaded decisions, like the replicator, for instance. Maybe the AI shouldn't use the replicator when the only thing you have is a replicator, but time and time again, every single turn, the AI would use the replicator to replicate my replicator, meaning that it was completely wasted time. Like, and yeah, sure, it's only a few seconds, but that does add up, and while amusing, I could see for some people that getting a little annoying, and I think it would make the game more interesting if the AI was able to make some sort of smart decision that really undercut you. And apart from, like, one time where I was backed into a corner where I had to take a bad pill, I don't think there's really many opportunities for the AI to do that, if it can. Right now, when your opponent player or yourself fully runs out of life, the game ends. My second gameplay session only lasted 5 minutes, in fact. I think it would be interesting to see the ways that side effects could try to develop on its core concept. Like I said, right now I just don't think it's on Buckshot Roulette's level, given that Buckshot Roulette has all these crazy things that can happen, but I do think that there is a lot of potential here for side effects to be its fun little experience. I mean, despite my criticisms, I did have fun playing it, and I kind of felt myself yearning for more, so I have no doubt in my mind that I'll probably be reviewing this again when the game has had some notable updates, but I wanted to get the word out now so that you can give the developer some support. The game is free to download. itch.io has this thing where with free games you can donate money if you want to, but you can grab it absolutely free, and I heartily recommend checking it out. It's a short experience that I think does have some good potential in it, and I wish the developer the best of luck in updating the game. Seeing as a new Deltarune chapter will be coming out this week, I decided to revisit Deltarune Chapter 1 to review it for this channel. And in a surprise to no one, I absolutely adored my time playing Deltarune Chapter 1. The experience is only 2 hours long, yet I can't think of a single moment in the game which dropped the pace, where there was any dead air. Toby Fox's writing, as always, was impeccable throughout this game. In this first chapter, you of course get acquainted to the main characters, Chris, Susie, Ralsei, and characters that will become important in future chapters like Noelle and Birdley. Everything of course has that signature sense of humour where everything is always slightly weird and kooky, which always lends its own charm to the experience. whilst also laying those potential seeds throughout of stuff that'll likely become important in future chapters, and has left many players like myself speculating, what some of this stuff could mean. Getting to watch the development of the characters, of course, was a lot of fun. I loved Susie's character arc, going from someone who was aggressive to anyone who even tried to get near to her, to aggressively defending those people who would become her friends. The ambiguity of Chris versus the player, which will no doubt be explored more and more as time goes on. Rylse's kind naivety, which likely stems from some other theories which I'm not going to get into, but, well, when you finish the main chapter, there's lots of toys left around that are reminiscent of several of the different characters that you meet in the Dark World, kind of hinting at some potential stuff down the road, about overlying themes, perhaps. And of course, Lancer was an absolute blast. His childish demeanor never changes, it just pivots from becoming your enemy and being evil to hoping that you'll be able to convince his dad that you should all be friends and you could probably eat more tree nachos. The game is constantly introducing these little things that keep the experience going, and it's crammed into just 2 hours of gameplay, and that was with me talking to almost everyone I came across, getting into nearly every battle I possibly could get into. And I guarantee you there were stones still left unturned in this experience, but the fact that in that 2 hours, it never felt like there was a moment where the game really dropped its pace is genuinely really impressive to me. The main gameplay, of course, is carried over from Undertale, but with some sprucing up, of course. Obviously you can still fight, you could have to dodge, of course, you can still fight, you can act to pacify opponents and spare them, you have items and stuff that you can use, you dodge bullet patterns. There's also the little magic stuff as well, which, depending on what character you're using, can create different effects. But of course, as well, there are now multiple characters that you have in your party, as you eventually get Susie and Rylse onto your party, and that allows you access to other acting abilities, which, when you're fighting multiple opponents, allows you to usually more effectively deal with the threat. Honestly, this was a blast. It might even be better than Undertale's way of doing things. Don't get me wrong, Undertale is still fun and I can't wait to replay it for a DUOMINUS review, but I feel like Deltarune took the concept and refined it. And of course, the music in the game is so good. Of course, mainly composed by Toby Fox once again. Toby is genuinely really good at creating a litany of different, tracks, be them silly, heartfelt, or action-packed depending on the situation. They always perfectly accompany any scene they're in. And it goes without saying, but so many of the designs by Temmie Chang are so wonderfully done. Every character has these little flourishes to them that allow them to just stick out all the more, and allows you to just get a little bit more of a dive into their personality that straight dialogue just can't do. I love the way Susie's face would shift over the course of the game, her eyes hidden in shadow, not allowing you to really get to see what's going on, except for those moments where she was either taken off guard or deliberately lowered her guard. It all works tremendously well to build the characters even more, and make them just even more lovable, really. I could go on and on, honestly, but I want to get on to playing Chapter 2 to do that review for the next day. My hope is to have reviews of Deltarune's Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and Undertale out this week. Fingers crossed I can actually get it all done on time. But yeah, I had an absolute blast playing this. Chapters 1 and 2 are absolutely free, and spoiler alert for Chapter 2 as well, you absolutely should check them both out. They are so much fun. Chapter 1 was a blast. Like I said, it's all you get all of this stuff going on in just under, in just 2 hours. It's a no-brainer, really, to me. And you can play it on pretty much every major console right now. Like, you can play it on the Switch, on the PS4, on the PS5, the Switch 2 in, like, what, a couple days? I'm pretty sure it's on Xbox, but I haven't checked. Point is, you can play it, and of course you play it on PC, which is what I did. It goes without saying, you absolutely should check this game out for yourself and experience the story of Deltarune. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe for more, and I hope to see you all next time. I remember when I first played Deltarune Chapter 1, that I was already thinking, dang, this is incredible. Like, it rivals even Undertale. Like, if the rest of the game is like this, then it's going to be incredible. Yet somehow Deltarune Chapter 2 manages to be even better, really. Like, to me, it's not even a contest. Like, sure, I'm still unsure if Deltarune is overall better than Undertale. There's just, like, certain things that touched me about Undertale that, you know, like, the highs are just so incredibly high of Undertale. But in terms of comparing Chapter 1 to Chapter 2, it's not even a contest. Obviously, we still get the continuing adventures of Chris, Susie, and Ralsei, but now Noelle and Berdly have been added to the mix, with Berdly being someone who is... he's got the spirit, he's full of himself, he's book smart if maybe not socially very aware, and he's clearly dealing with some deep insecurities. And then of course you have Noelle, and oh my god, it feels like you could make a whole friggin' video essay about Noelle. Between her anxieties, the relationship she has with her dad and her mum, her crush on Susie, it's all culminates in a character that I am praying we get much more of in the future chapters. I'm praying we get to see more of her in Chapter 3, quite frankly, because I feel like we've seen so much about her that needs to be explored more. Of course, we also got other characters as well. The practically iconic at this point Spamton G. Spamton, who was the first time I've ever actually decided to fight one of the hidden boss fights, meaning I probably had to go back to Chapter 1 to fight Jevil. Oh well. But Spamton is obviously a lot of fun himself, with this crazy, almost randomness about him, but still they're hinting at something darker, something that even seems to disturb Chris when you fight Spamton Neo. And honestly, the thing of Spamton, you know, his zaniness, his wackiness, going into overdrive when you cut all but one string, just for it to go like that the second you've cut the final puppet string, it's quite bleak, really. Also, oh my god, that Spamton Neo fight drove me crazy. Easily got to be the most difficult fight I've had so far in Deltarune. And then, of course, there's the Queen, and the Queen is my favourite character so far in this game. She gets to flourish the most under Toby Fox's sense of humour, while still being a valid threat. Her interactions with Berdly wanting to desperately avoid him have led to some iconic moments, like the, okay, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just annoying bit. Her reactions and just dialogue in general, I've often found she's just funny. Like, I don't know how else to put it. She's just really funny. The Punch-Out style boss fight is a great little addition. In fact, there's lots of bits like this. It feels like they're really getting to flex their muscles on what they can do with the game. You know, you get that, you have this house-claiming fight with Rules Card. The bullet patterns are clearly a case of them getting to indulge all the more on, like, what they can get away with. Like, it feels like they're really getting to flex their creativity in every aspect imaginable, meaning, again, there's never a dull moment in this game. There's, of course, additions from guest artists, notably for me, an artist I was actually already aware of before this chapter came out, Nell, coming in to design several characters, such as Sweet Cap and Cakes and Task Manager. Honestly, I think these designs were really rock, to be honest with you. They definitely still carry some of Nell's, like, signature style, yet I still think the characters look great in the overall world of Deltarune. The music is also, in my opinion, possibly even stepped up from Chapter 1 as well. There are some genuinely iconic tracks in this, like Cyberworld was an amazing, like, bit of music. Possibly one of my favorite video game tracks, let alone just from Deltarune. And the fact that they added like a music player at the end of the chapter, I think was a genius touch. The chapter is also much longer than chapter 1. You know, easily twice as long, though more so because I was struggling with the Spam to Neo fight. And given that, and I think that's because the chapter I believe was originally going to be paid for, but Toby ended up giving it for free. And let me tell you, it's incredible. Please just play it. I cannot recommend it enough. The fact that you get chapters 1 and 2 absolutely for free, and you're probably going to be spending a combined, like 6 hours on the game, maybe longer if you're playing, like, the Jevil and Spam to Neo fights. Genuinely, I cannot recommend it enough. The confirmation at the end, spoiler warning, that Chris is the knight, and of course a little bit more of a dive into the separation between Chris and the player that I'm hoping will be investigated maybe a little bit more. Maybe not chapter 3, but chapter 4 is coming out at the same time. I would like to see maybe a little dive into what's going on there. That's the thing though, isn't it though? Like, the game has laid so much more groundwork for things to go down. You know, what's going to happen between Noelle and Susie? Will Birdley continue to develop? I mean, if you play Snowgrave, definitely not. In fact, if you did the Snowgrave route, what's happened to Birdley? Is he dead? Or is this just part of the seemingly play pretend that the Dark World seemed to be based off of? Who knows? You know, what is this all building up to? What are chapter 3 and 4 going to bring? You know, what is the goal of Chris separate from us, the player? Is Chris this evil entity that some believe them to be? Or are they just an entity of chaos that is going about their own path, irrespective of what you've chosen? And of course, what are Ralsei's intentions? Because I know that the speech that Ralsei gives when they were about to open up another fountain did get some players to raise their eyebrows, and Ralsei really is on our side. I imagine Ralsei is, but there is also the chance that Ralsei is a shade of grey. Certain characters cannot be in different Dark Worlds. Like, what's that all about? You know, when we saw Lanza turn into stone, does that have potential future implications with other chapters? I guess there's only one way to find out, and that'll be to eagerly await for chapter 3, which thankfully is coming real soon. Either way, this once again gets a huge recommendation from me. Don't waste any more time, try the game out for yourself. Like, I can go on and on, but it's just more amazing Deltarune action, and I cannot wait for chapter 3. Please be sure to leave a like on this review, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time. Deltarune's chapters 3 and 4 are finally here! Now, I only have the time right now to play chapter 3, I'll be playing chapter 4 later, so expect a review of that tomorrow. There's going to be some spoilers, because you kind of have to talk about the story. Oh my god! Chapter 3, what a wild rush. So, of course, this time, what with the Dark Fountain being opened up in the living room, this one actually has to do with the TV, hinted by the marathon that Susie had wanted to have in chapter 2. And the main villain of this chapter is Tenna, and Tenna was a rush. Tenna is animated in this pseudo 3D style similar to games like Donkey Kong Country. They're desperate to get your attention because their whole thing is that the world is moving on. You know, everyone's growing up and not going to this one living room to watch TV shows like they used to. You know, Azriel's going off to college to get education. Noelle's family all are off doing different things. The only person who's probably still just watching the TV on the regular is Toriel watching reruns. And it's left them feeling extremely insecure. They desperately want you to pay more attention to them, to spend time with them again. And Anais told them that they can absolutely have that as long as they just keep you there forever, basically. This leads to a series of weird little mini-games throughout. This is easily the least battle-heavy chapter so far, as a lot of the gameplay focuses on mini-games. There's quizzes that you have to answer, there's all these little things here and there, like a shooting mini-game, this Legend of Zelda style experience where you have to puzzle solve, there's a cooking mini-game where you have to dodge the fire, and At first I was a little bit off-put by just how different the experience was. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting when I was launching up Deltarune. But to tell you the truth, the longer that the experience went on, the more I warmed myself up to it. It was a fun experience, and the nightmarish turn it takes once you make it clear that you do not want to stick around is brilliant stuff. They really do make the most of the gimmick for this chapter, as even when you get into the final fight, the TV channel keeps changing, forcing you to quickly jump between all the different minigames you've been playing throughout. The graphics are always amazing. Like, the usual 2D sprite work is great. You get to see, because of the TV aesthetic, you get to see the main trio in all these different outfits, you know, just across these different channels and these different mini-games. The gameplay front is, of course, a lot of fun. There's also the fact, you know, Tenna's 3D sprite work, which at first was really off-putting, but I think that's kind of the idea. Like, it is very unique, I'll say that much. And you do eventually get used to it with time, but my goodness, does it make Tenna seem off-putting. It reminds me of, like, I don't know, when I was younger, you know, I have a giant CRT, well, I say giant, it's giant to me anyway, CRT TV that I still have, and when I was a kid, it was always off-putting, so really good. And they have, like, a whole VHS intro thing as well, like, there's just so much going on in this. And then there's, of course other little characters as well. The couple designed by now look great, and oh my god, Rules Card ruins everything he touches. But it was that was another fun bit as well. The battle with him had its own unique take that made it just a blast to play through. As in this chapter, there was a thing where all of the options got changed to act, which actually did throw in some crazy wildcards that I wasn't really expecting. Now the ultimate twist, and this is when we get into heavy spoiler territory. Throughout the chapter, you end up with a situation where Ralsei is saying about how, guys, we're not real. Like, you know, we're created essentially by your imagination in the darkness, or what Ralsei's saying is that how real they are is flimsy at best. Like, once you get a little bit of light, their world ceases to exist, and so do they. And Ralsei's trying to be like, it's okay, you know, that's fine. And Susie, of course, is downtrodden by that because Ralsei's become a very close friend to her and Chris. So when it all culminates in Tenna desperately wanting to not be forgotten, not to be thrown out, because nobody's watching the TV anymore, Ralsei at first goes with the approach of, hey, it's okay if you get thrown out, we kind of have to be eventually. And then you have Susie on the other end being like, hey, I know what it's like to be discarded, to think that there's no hope for me, and you don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be the end. There will be someone out there for you. And I'm thinking, oh, great, they're gonna look really weird in my, you know, castle town, but hey, I'll happily put them in. Don't know what their interactions with the king and queen are gonna be like, but I'm up for it. And then Tenna gets killed by the Roaring Knight. Suddenly that throws a whole series of questions in. Hang on, the Roaring Knight. Now, I don't know what to think of this. I still think that the Roaring Knight has something to do with Chris, but I can't say for sure. The Roaring Knight is a battle you cannot win, and honestly, it completely throws a spanner in the works. Now, I don't know what is happening. There's 2 dark worlds because Susie goes off to close the previous dark fountain, but you stick around, and the chapter ends right as the door opens. Undyne gets kidnapped. I completely forgot to mention that. Undyne gets kidnapped. What is going on? I've been worried throughout every chapter that it's the moment where everything's going to get dark and bleak. This seems the most likely point where that's going to start happening. You know, I don't think it's going to get completely bleak. It's Deltarune. It's been even in the darker moments, they seem to have some jovial nature to it. Maybe chapter 4 is going to be seriously dark. I don't know just yet. I'm going to be jumping into that tomorrow. But, oh my god. I can't recommend this enough. Please get the game. There's so much that I want to dive into. There's so many questions that I need to have answered. And I cannot wait to play chapter 4. Also, when you're turning against Tenna, for some reason, the ones that turn to stone are all the TV people. And that's crazy to me. Like, that throws in some whole other sense of implications. Why is it that the people who are from this dark world are the ones turning to stone? What's going on here? Is it because they're not toys? Is it because they're not, because when I was interacting with one of the characters, it mentioned that it was a plug. Like, it wasn't meant to be played with, but Chris used to when they were a kid. Is that why? There's so many questions that this chapter has raised. Please, please, please check out Deltarune if you haven't already. This is an incredible chapter. Like I said, it's got less battles than usual, but I think like all the different like mini games and stuff that they added in helps to create this chapter's own sense of identity. The fact that they pulled the rug out from under me, I'm still reeling from that. And I don't know what's going to happen here. I get the idea is about like nostalgia, growing up, you know. And I'm assuming like just not losing sight of what you held onto so dearly when you were younger. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Oh my god, edit this in at some point. Of course, the music is a banger, the graphics are bangers. I got so caught up on the story, I completely forgot to add these bits in. Yeah, the music as always is brilliant. Kind of nervous about what Chapter 4 is going to bring, and you'll have to hear about my thoughts on that tomorrow, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, and like this video, please, to show your support. Deltarune Chapter 4. The more I think about it, the more it feels like Chapter 3 was the calm before the storm. This chapter felt like it dumped so much lore onto us. Let's get into it. So, despite the dark ending in Chapter 3, it flash cuts to everything being bright and jovial again. I had severe whiplash when the chapter first started, because I was thinking, oh my god, Tenna's dead. We've seen the Roaring Night. Like, this surely is the point of no return. Wake up, sweetie. I've got pancakes for you. I was in disbelief when that happened. I couldn't believe that we were going back to things being bright and cheery again. But it was a nice little welcome distraction. We got to mess around at the church. Eventually, we ended up making our way to Noelle's house, which led to a very interesting situation. This was the longest we've spent with Chris separating themselves from the soul, aka us. And it led to a whole thing where we couldn't interact with anything, and we had to kind of just navigate around and get stuff done. Because Chris was off on the sidelines, this also allowed us to get another great in-depth Susie and Noelle interaction. They're so close. They're so close. Susie's gonna go with Noelle to the festival. I know Toby's gonna find a way to ruin this for us. Like, something's gonna happen to stop them from getting to enjoy their time at the festival, or the festival's just going to explode into flames. But for now, I'm going to hold on to the belief that they'll finally get to enjoy each other's time. Here we get to see how Chris, while may not be the knight like I'd previously thought, definitely has some close ties with someone that maybe isn't quite who we think they are. Okay, game theories right now. I think my top theories, of course, the popular theory is that Carol is the Roaring Knight. I've heard some people say, oh, maybe it's Des. Maybe Des is actually not dead, and oh, wouldn't that be crazy? I got another theory. This one may be more of a stretch because the horns definitely look more like antlers. But come on, you're telling me that Azrael wouldn't make himself an edgy OC like the Roaring Knight? I'm just saying, it may be possible. Speaking of Carol Holiday, this is when we get introduced to her. And oh my god, she is far colder than I had expected. She comes in with just this steely expression and clearly has no love for Susie. Like, just tells her, no, we don't want you here, get out. Like, it is genuinely quite it's quite concerning, let's say. And I'm worried that she's going to find a way to get involved. I can see why people are thinking she may be the Roaring Knight. And I think that could theoretically work with, like, the concept of how everything is essentially, partially imagination created in the dark. it could be that Carol is trying to stomp that out of Noelle and, you know, make her get serious. I mean, Carol ends up having an interaction with Chris being like, you are always welcome here, with like you being emphasized in red. Clearly something may be up, or it's a red herring, which could also be the case. Keep in mind, Carol is going through a lot. I mean, lost one of their children, could be about to lose her husband. Like, you know, there is always the possibility that Toby is going to, you know, pull the rug out from under us again and destroy another popular theory. Anyway, we end up discovering a new dark world, which has been created inside of the church. And in that, we discover this old man who we realize is a Lightner, just like us, who got sucked into this dark world. And honestly, the interactions are incredible. You actually get new acts with the old man, and they're generally like the best ones if you want to end a battle, because the old man will accidentally, quote unquote, finish the battle for you, essentially, or do enough to make the battle an absolute breeze. I say accidentally in quotes because it's quite obvious that the old man is smarter than he's letting on. This ends up actually leading to a very fun little story with him and Susie, where Susie, of course, at first is frustrated with the old man, but it's, you know, that age-old story where the old man helps to mold Susie, helps to encourage her development, not by giving her the answers, but by giving her all the pieces in the puzzle and allowing her to figure it out for herself. It's actually a really touching moment. I'm trying to be as vague about it as possible because I think it's something you should need to see for yourself. But I really did love this whole story. And the twist at the end, oh my god, okay. I'm going to leave a spoiler warning at the beginning of this, so I guess I can say it. The reveal when they go back to the light world and realize that the old man has been dead the entire time when they discover his dust in a jar. Basically his urn. That was crazy, and it does have some like wild implications. There's so many different possibilities. Even if Noelle's dad does die, there's the chance that we have like one final goodbye in the dark world. Oh my god, sorry, my brain is exploding. I don't know what this is leading to, but there's a lot of possibilities here. Susie ends up wanting to create another dark world to get talk to the old man one last time, and ends up, and this is where we see like the whole thing of where even if you're in the same place, if someone else creates the dark fountain, it will create a slightly different dark fountain. And oh my god, the fight with like this twisted old man is the only way I can think to put it, was actually kind of not scary, but just it was a bit discomforting playing that fight. And it felt like I only just barely got by. That's another thing about this chapter. It has some of the more difficult regular fights that I've had, including the one at the very end, as we end up eventually going into a third Dark World. This one ends up with us meeting the Roaring Knight again, who ends up creating the Titan. The Titans that we've been warned about at the very beginning of the game. And it creates this whole thing where we're climbing up the Roaring Titan, who's in 3D, and we have to race up. We're launching ourselves up. This is like a mechanic that got introduced earlier in the chapter. And we have to make our way to the top. Once we make our way to the top, we are in this battle with the Titan. And genuinely, this fight was so difficult until I eventually realized that I was just not playing it right. I want to stress that right now. This is clearly a case where I was struggling to see what I was meant to do, but once I figured it out, it became a lot easier to deal with. It also helps that Toby put a little failsafe thing in, where if you do die, there are these chests that will appear behind you when you jump back in. And it increases each time you die, so it'll go from, like, say, 2 chests to 3 chests, so on and so on and so on, meaning you'll get more healing items to try and help you just that little bit further until you do finally beat it. That's a really nice design choice, honestly, because you don't want any players to get, like, truly stuck on this. If you are struggling with the Titan, by the way, just make sure to always select to have your soul be brightened. It's a tiny amount of, like, the TP, but you'll end up making a lot more from it, and it makes a lot of the more difficult patterns are a lot easier to deal with. When it looks like all hope is lost, getting to see the old man appear once again, this time as the full-blown hammer of justice, that was excellent. I love that bit. I know that this will probably be the only time we get to see the old man in this, in the entire game, but honestly, the old man ended up being like a really nice addition to the story, and I think did help, in terms of the lore. Also, my god, Susie got put through the ringer in this one. Not only is she now got like another thing in the way of her love story, but, she had this development from the old man. There's the whole thing with the prophecy. It genuinely, this was a very Susie-centered story. It made Susie feel like she is the true protagonist in this. Or at the very least, is on just an as important footing as anyone else. I genuinely felt so bad for her in this. And we did get a better idea on why Rousey has been acting the way that he has. It seems that Rousey isn't some double agent like some people worried might be the case. It's that Rousey knew the prophecy the entire time, and he's been hoping, praying that somehow, some way it would change, but knows that things are going to go down a very bleak road based on the fact that based on the prophecy and the fact that it's so far been extremely accurate and it has not changed, no matter what they do. So it does put into context a lot more why Rousey has been acting the way he has. It's not that Rousey is a double agent, he's just scared for his friends. Oh my god, that was a lot of chat, and that was just about the story beats. There is so much going on in this chapter, it's unbelievable. I genuinely, and despite the way it sounds, it's not just bleak, 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 bleak. There is the jovial moments here and there. There is even one at the very end, which I won't go into. You've probably seen it if you've been scrolling, but honestly, it does help to lighten things up a bit after just how heavy this chapter was. Then there was also even a little joke fight put in the middle of the chapter against Jackenstein, I think its name was. I've heard some people say that they really struggled with this fight. Basically, the bullet pattern in this one is actually a situation kind of like old Pac-Man crossed with, I think it was an old game called Berserk. The Pac-Man part is you have to collect all these little dots, get to the key and get to the end again. With the Berserk part being that in Berserk, if you took too long, there would be this invincible face that would chase you down and would take you out. And Jackenstein is just like that, where if you're taking too long, you literally will have the pumpkin shell being like, "You're taking too long," and starts chasing you down as you have to quickly hurry to the exit. And the fight does go on a while, but clearly that's intentional because the longer you spend, the more weird variations that come from this, because after a while of, "You're taking too long," the game will do other versions, you'll see these wider holes, and it makes sense once you get the key, because suddenly you see a long pumpkin face being like, "You're long," and suddenly the soul is stretched out and you can only go through the wide holes to get to the exit. Or Jackenstein will be like, "I think I'm being too harsh, I'll try to be more polite," and when the pumpkin appears, it's like, "You're taking too long," and it's really slow as it tries to come after you, until the regular pumpkin face appears and goes, "You're taking too long is taking too long," and I love this, actually. It goes on too long, I'll readily admit that. It could also be because I beat this fight on my first try, it's helping to endear itself to me, and I got some of the potential references it was making, and for players that are struggling a bit more, yeah, it's probably going to annoy them quite a bit more. It goes without saying, the music is, as always, a banger. The graphics were incredible. Some of the pixel art in this is genuinely, really detailed, especially when you're fighting the Titan. The 3D graphics are great. I love the design of characters like the old man. I can already tell I had so much more to talk about this chapter than I think I've had any of the previous chapters, so it kind of makes sense to me why this chapter took so long to finally get ready. But let me tell you, I cannot wait for chapter 5. I am desperate. We've passed the halfway point, and I can only imagine what the next 3 chapters have in store for us. I said it before in the Chapter 3 review, but please, please, please do check out Deltarune. It's one of the best games that I've played in a good long while, and I have been having a blast playing through this, getting sucked into the story, and getting attached to the characters. If you enjoyed Undertale, it's a no-brainer. You probably already have it in your plans to play it, at least if you aren't already. Yeah, definitely go and check this game out. It gets a hearty recommendation. And if you enjoyed this review, please be sure to leave a like on this video, and I hope to see you all next time. You know, when someone tells me that something is one of the greatest games of all time, I almost seem to have a predisposition to expect to be slightly disappointed. Not to say that a game's going to be bad, I can still very much enjoy a game, but when someone's telling me something is the best game of all time, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm sure it's one of your favourite games, but it's not going to be one of the best games of all time. So suffice to say, I went into Super Mario World with a fair bit of skepticism. I mean, was it really going to be that good? Yeah, it actually is really, really good. It might be one of the better platforming experiences I've played this year. Super Mario World was of course the big Mario platformer for the Super Nintendo. And let me tell you, I've been having a lot of fun with it. When I was describing my Super Mario Bros. Review, I'd actually just finished playing Super Mario World when I jumped back into it, which is why I said Super Mario Bros. For the NES had nearly perfect movement, because Super Mario World is snappier and overall flows are even better. Mario's movement options combined with the level design work extremely harmoniously. Of course you have Mario's typical standard moveset with the jump, you can get a fire flower and whatnot, but you also have stuff like a spin jump which allows you to break blocks below you. You have stuff like the cape which allows you to do a little spin attack, much like the Tanuki tail would let you do. You can grab a hold of Koopa shells and throw them, not just in front of you, but you can throw them upwards to hit stuff above you, which comes in very handy when you're fighting certain bosses, like the final boss, where you don't just have to throw them upwards, but you have to time it just right to hit Bowser right on the head. And listen, I could go on and on. I'm just barely scratching the surface. You know, there's all kinds of other stuff. The cape allows you to fly if you get it just right. There's all the stuff with Yoshi. Safe to say, this game has a lot going on in it. And honestly, I had a blast playing through it from beginning to end. In terms of the level design, my only real problem would be like the levels where, in order to progress, you had to find the secret exit, which, you know, obviously because they're secret exits, you kind of have to go out of your way to find them, and it was just not overly frustrating, but just a little frustrating. So it's a little knock against the game, but it's no deal breaker. Honestly, my one big detraction from the game is a lot of the graphics are, in my opinion, a little bit scuffed. Not to say everything looks bad, there's quite a few graphics that, similar to Mario Bros. For the NES, I think are borderline iconic, but there's a lot of graphics in this game where I'm like, ooh, you know, the Super Nintendo would go on to do way better things. So visually, I don't think the game has aged tremendously well. The music, of course, is excellent, and so with amazing gameplay and incredible music, honestly, my only other bit of sadness was when the game ended. Like, I was thinking, dang, it's over already? Like, I'm pretty sure I could have played a game twice as long and I would have still been up for more. So I gotta give Super Mario World a hearty recommendation. It's an easy enough game to find and play. You know, Nintendo has it on their Nintendo Switch Online service as part of their, like, whole... What do they call it? Like, I just call it the Virtual Console still. But honestly... And I have the actual cartridge for it, so I've been playing it on real hardware, though the footage captured here is from the Nintendo Switch. It's honestly a game I highly recommend trying out if you're looking to get into the Mario games. I guess the next slot for me, in terms of best games of all time that I'm slightly skeptical of, would be to finally play that Super Mario 64 cartridge I got for my birthday. So, if you want to see what my thoughts will be on that when I finally get around to playing it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video. Overall though, Super Mario World is a game that was an absolute blast from start to finish, and honestly, If I don't replay the game, I'll probably be gunning for 100% completion. When I got a Nintendo Switch OLED, I was immediately really happy. I had gotten a bunch of Nintendo Switch games to play on my Lite, only for that thing to suddenly break down, and I was gutted. There's a bunch of games that I need to catch up on, and I started off by playing Pokemon Shining Pearl, the Gen 4 remakes that, honestly, I'd seen had got people talking quite a bit online. Now, the general gist that I saw was that people thought that the game was majorly disappointing. I had a friend say that it was the first Pokemon game that they didn't even beat. So I made sure to prepare myself, knowing that this game was allegedly so bad and so disappointing, and given it was based off the inferior Diamond and Pearl instead of Platinum, I knew that I had to prepare myself for an experience that maybe wouldn't have been the best. This is the part where I tell you that I absolutely loved Pokemon Shining Pearl. Honestly, I get it if this wasn't your thing, but for me, this was brilliant. So I think we should tackle the art style first. Of course, this game decided to go with a chibi art style, more reminiscent of how the sprites looked in the original game. And I get that, you know, with the fact that there are in fact like fully detailed models in the game, there is definitely, I can see the argument that they should have stuck with that for the entire game. Truth be told though, I actually really like the chibi art style, and them switching in and out, I think, is the best of both worlds. I think it only really falls apart in like a few very select areas of the story mode when it's trying to be a bit more serious, such as on Spear Pillar, you know, when that Palkia was being summoned. Obviously then it starts to fall apart seeing the chibi art style, because now you've suddenly got Cyrus trying to be brooding and shocked in the face of this god, and he looks like that. Like, it does fall apart there, I will readily admit that, but I just don't see it as a big deal, and I think the art style's really cute, so I'm absolutely fine with the direction they chose there. Gameplay-wise, it's Pokemon. Keep in mind that the last Pokemon game I played before my Switch Lite died was Sword and Shield, so I need to get into Pokemon Violet and get to enjoy what an open world Pokemon experience can be. But I was able to slip into this experience so easily because it's basically just Gen 4, but with all the tweaks, updates, and creature comforts that have happened over time. You know, some Pokemon have updated typing, there's new moves that these Pokemon can learn since back in the day of Gen 4. And of course, there's stuff like the experience share, which I am going to praise that experience share from the rooftops. I remember back when it first came around, people were complaining about how that experience share makes things too easy. Honestly, I'll gladly take it because it does cut out some of the meaningless grinding. You know, not all of us have the free time to grind every individual Pokemon to the levels necessary to progress anymore. Sometimes it's nice to have that, you know, quick little shortcut. And if you don't like it, you can just turn it off, I'm pretty sure. Another update that I really liked was back in the day in Gen 4, there was this special little area in Hearthome City where Pokemon could follow you around, but only in that area, and only with certain Pokemon. Clearly they were experimenting to prepare for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which lets you do it all over Johto and Kanto. But obviously, given that there won't be any Gen 2 remakes, they've actually fully implemented the feature in this Gen 4 remake, and that is awesome! I loved running around with my Infernape and later my Palkia around Sinnoh. And all the Pokemon, I'm pretty sure, had like different speeds based on which Pokemon you pick, which I also thought is a fun little detail. They absolutely didn't need to do that. They could have just had it be like keep the Pokemon chained to you, and I doubt many of us would have complained. But I think that just adds a little bit more to it. Of course, the Pokemon teleport to you if you go too far away, but I still think that's a pretty neat feature. One area I didn't understand, and maybe that's on me, I want to preface that, it's probably on me, but I didn't understand the update to the contests. I went to join a contest, and I was met with a rhythm game. I did the rhythm game, and then it ended, and can you still win ribbons in this? Have I completely misunderstood how the contests work in this game? But that doesn't really matter. Battling was a ton of fun in this game. Of course, now the HP bars go a lot faster than they did in Gen 4. This game got to benefit the exact same way that Red and Green did when they got updated, and Gold and Silver did when they got updated, getting a lot of those little creature comforts. Is there more that they could have done? Absolutely. I remember Heart Gold and Soul Silver, for instance, were games that I sunk a ton of time into, and I guarantee a lot of that was stuff that they updated and tweaked. But I still had a genuinely fun time throughout the entire game. I wanted a Gen 4 remake, and that's exactly what I got. Anything else would have been a fun bonus. I think another, sad thing that I had is that I'm at the post-game now, and I haven't really played around too much in it, but it seems that we only get the Battle Tower in this case, which makes sense. It's a remake of Diamond and Pearl, not of Platinum, but I loved Platinum's post-game. Platinum was the first Pokemon game that I ever played, and I sunk so much time into stuff like the Battle Factory, getting to rent out Pokemon, that I really wish that they had carried over that post-game. That would have been incredible if we got to do all of that. Again, I get it, it's not the end of the world, and I'm still happy with what I got, but yeah, that is definitely one thing that I do yearn for. Overall though, I still had a lot of fun with this. I can totally understand people who maybe weren't satisfied with this experience, but I'm more than satisfied with it. Visually, I like the way the game looks. Of course, I love the music. It's remakes of the classic Gen 4 soundtrack, which I've grown extremely nostalgic for. The battling, of course, has been updated to be even better than it was back in the day. All in all, I just really can't think of anything that was really a deal breaker in this experience, and I had a ton of fun, and I have to heartily recommend it to any Pokemon fan. In fact, if you're new to the series, it probably would be better to play this over the original Gen 4 games. I love them, and I'll still jump back to those old DS games, but I feel like this would be easier for newer fans to step into. And if you're someone who misses the good old days of Generation 4, and for anyone who's looking at me weird, Gen 4 came out in 2006, it's been nearly 20 years now, then I'd recommend giving this game a shot. Honestly, I feel like while I understand some of the negativity, I do feel that it was a little overblown. I think this game's a ton of fun, and I think you will too. Anyway, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe for more reviews.